So good afternoon, I'm here with Richard Laurendeau. He's managing broker of RE.'s Westcoast, which covers the Richmond market. And RE.'s Westcoast has been servicing the Richmond market since the late 1990s. And I understand, Richard, you also live and work in Richmond and have for a number of years.
I do, yes.
So that's wonderful. So we're hoping to get some insight from you about the Richmond market, and maybe we can talk about what's happened over 2013, just looking back and seeing what surprised you. What did you see happen last year that you weren't expecting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we can look back to 2013 and say it was a fair year if we measure that by the activity level. Mm-hmm. Sometimes from a homeowner's perspective, it's measured by how well did my home do in terms of appreciation. Mm-hmm. There was no great stories to tell there. It was a generally level year. I think statistically we would say it ended up with slight gains, but the markets vary so much by location. I can share stories with you of some losses. I can share some stories with you of upsides. Mm-hmm. Blended, slight increases over the year. But the health of the market, we measure more by the activity level as opposed to prices moving upwards or downwards. Okay. And from that perspective, it was a fair year.
And is that compared over a 10-year average, or did you find that up over 2012, for example?
Well, it would have been up over 2012. Mm-hmm. It would have been on the lower side of some previous times, but some of those years that when they talk about, you bring up the 10-year mm-hmm. average, we have to put a perspective in place that our market and West Vancouver's market between 2000 and 2008 enjoyed some spectacular times, both in terms of activity level and price appreciation. Mm-hmm. So we haven't met the mark from that perspective. But when we were in those times, we understood them to be banner years that didn't represent the norm.
Right, a bit of an anomaly.
Right. So today sometimes you'll hear some stats that say, it's off from the 10-year number. Mm-hmm. But really we have to put some perspective. Mm-hmm. 2013 was a fine year, numbers-wise. Mm-hmm. Could it have been a little better? Sure. But it was a fine year.
It was a fine year. And so what were some of the surprises then that came out of that year?
Well, I don't know that I really had surprises. I was pleased by kind of the price bands that we saw being active, what mm-hmm. we'd expect in the Richmond marketplace, single-family homes, that $700 to $1.7 million kind of category, very healthy in terms of sales. We're reasonably, I don't want to say consistently, but we're seeing price points break the $2 million mark like we've never had before in Richmond. Mm-hmm. That might be a surprise. Mm-hmm. I had one gentleman observing to me the other day that he was in awe of the price points at the premium end being had in our marketplace. And the consistent theme in that is people are looking for exceptional quality. Right. They're looking for high-end finishing. They've got the money, they want to enjoy the lifestyle, they can
It's the luxury finishings throughout the home.
Throughout the home.
Just having that price point, or perhaps address as well now.
Oh, address they like, but yeah, they want it decked out.
Right. Now, so for 2014, coming off of a fairly stable year, then what are you seeing happen for prices?
We've come out in previous reports that we've made regionally with the RE.max system as anticipating modest gains mm-hmm. for 2014. Coupled with, again, a moderate increase in activity level, mm-hmm. units of sales sold overall in the Lower Mainland. Mm-hmm. And Richmond will be one of the leading factors in that.
Really? Okay. And so how do you see that, if the pricing you see is going to be some of the leading factor, how do you see that impacting the listings and perhaps the sales in Richmond as well?
Well, we anticipate units of sales mm-hmm. to increase.
Okay.
That will require an increase in inventory. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be an overly large influx of inventory because that gives a downward pressure on mm-hmm. price. Maybe that's simple economics. Right. But there should be a fair number of listings available, probably an increase over what we saw this year. Okay. But the demand should outpace that and allow us to enjoy modest gains. Modest in my world comes between 2 and 4 points.
Okay. And so where do you see some of the hot spots in Richmond, or perhaps some of the hot properties or features that people are looking for?
Yeah. We've all got our definitions of hotspot, right?
Yeah.
So a hotspot for me means where's the activity level?
Right.
The activity level will remain in that 700 million, 7 category. But within that, I think the fun areas to look at are going to be new projects. This is not new stuff in terms of the aging population, and maybe they're leaving the homes and going into the strata lifestyle, close the door and enjoy life and perhaps more travel.
A little bit of a snowbird.
A little bit of a snowbird. And certainly that may not have happened to the extent that we thought it was going to. People are staying in the home longer. Maybe because they want the home to entertain the family. Maybe because they like the kids coming back. I'm not sure what that mix is. But when they have been making those moves, it hasn't been for what we traditionally thought it was going to be. Because the aging population is not new to us. We've known it was coming for a while. This bubble that everyone talks about moving through the economy,
Right.
and in our case the real estate system, that they were going to want to leave the big homes and getting into the condo lifestyle. When we first thought about that, we thought that they were going to cash in equity.
Right.
But we're finding they're not doing that. Whether it's the $800,000 home or the $1,500,000 home, we're finding they're taking that money and they're putting it into the condo.
Okay.
Not necessarily looking to put money in their pockets. And as a result, they're buying the higher end finishing. I mean, if you had the time, visit the pier in Steveston. It's a classic example of location by the water. Richmond has other examples across the bridge here that has had some great success by being in proximity to the water and the views that come along with that. It's a lifestyle choice, right? It's not a physical finishing, but it's an amenity that people love. Size. There used to be a time when we didn't think of apartments, condominiums at the 1,500 square foot range.
Right.
That we used to think of homes in that category. And just amazing. You really need to check that out. So people are getting out of the home, getting these, not pocketing money, but enjoying a wonderful lifestyle that comes with it.
Really? So that's interesting. So it's the downsizer, really not downsizing.
Not downsizing, no, just shifting.
To a less maintenance lifestyle. Right. So it'll be interesting to see then. What do you think? What's happening along the Olympic Oval area? There is a lot of new home development that's coming up there. And how do you think that might impact the condo market in Richmond?
Well, that's probably the big wild card, because there is such a phenomenal growth in that whole strata segment in the core of Richmond, let alone the Olympic Oval. That volume would suggest to us that the market is confident that it'll absorb it, but it makes me cautious as to whether or not there will be any appreciable gains in value until the absorption is all addressed.
Right.
So lots to choose from, and that's the upside for the consumer.
Right.
It also means that the consumer doesn't need to worry about, I'm going to pay more in 6 months for this today because there's a shortage of inventory. They can take their time, be selective, take advantage of incentives that developers may have to offer, and make choices that work for them in the long run.
Great.
As opposed to, if you would look back, go pre-2008, the buyer was at the table with this sense of rush. I have to make a decision. I have to make it now because there's 10 other people behind me. And we heard all the time of people paying more than asking price. Buyers are going to love it. That's not the case today. Usually not the case.
Not usually.
We do have some examples of multiple offers,
Right.
but it's not what it was before.
Well, that's wonderful. So it sounds like it's a good time to come into Richmond. Take your time, look around, and pick something that gives you the features and luxury lifestyle that you want. And I think it's always important to come and talk if you're coming from out of town, to come and talk to a local agent who knows the market. So I thank you for your time, Richard.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.